The amount of aspirin absorbed into the bloodstream of an adult is modelled by the equation m of t is equal to 80t times e to the power of negative 0.5t, where m is the mass of the aspirin in milligrams and t is the time in hours after the tablet is ingested. So before we get too far into this question, what we're going to do is define this function on the calculator. So go into the main menu, and what we want to do is we want to type out our function, but instead of using t, we'll use x. So we want 80x times e to the power of negative 0.5x. And now if we highlight this and go interactive define, we can give the function name using the ABC keyboard as capital M of x, and that is our function defined. For part A, we're asked to determine the amount of aspirin in the bloodstream when the tablet is initially ingested. So this is when t is equal to 0, so we want to find the value of m when t is equal to 0. So the next thing we want to do on the CAS calculator is evaluate m when x is 0. So we can drag it down and replace x with 0 and hit execute. And from the calculator, that is equal to 0 milligrams in the bloodstream. So that's the answer for part A. For part B, we're asked to determine the amount of aspirin in the bloodstream 4 hours after the tablet is ingested. So that means we want to find the value of m when t is equal to 4. Next, we can drag down m of x once again and replace x with 4 this time. And hitting execute, that will give us the amount, and that gives us the amount of aspirin in the bloodstream 4 hours after it's ingested. So from the calculator, this is equal to 320 times e to the power of negative 2. And that's in milligrams. And because it doesn't ask for a decimal approximation, we give the exact answer as 320 times e to the negative 2 milligrams. For your interest, that is approximately 43.31 milligrams in the bloodstream. A pharmacist is interested in the maximum amount of aspirin absorbed into the bloodstream. Determine how long it takes for the adult to absorb the maximum amount of aspirin and the maximum amount of aspirin that is absorbed by the adult. State your answer correct to 2 decimal places. So on the calculator, to find the maximum, we're actually going to graph this function. So hitting the graph icon brings up this screen, and then we can drag m of x down, and that will graph the function for us. Now we need to resize this window. So we're going to go from x is 0, or t is 0, up until t is, say, 10. And we're going to go from a y minimum of 0 up to 100. And hopefully that will fit the graph on the screen for us. Hitting OK, and we can see that it does. And we can use analysis gsolve maximum, or max, to find the maximum. So hitting execute will lock that point on the graph, and we can see our maximum occurs when t is 2, and that gives us a maximum amount absorbed into the bloodstream of 58.86 milligrams. So from the graph screen, we found that the maximum occurs at t is equal to 2. Therefore, m evaluated at 2 is equal to 58.86 milligrams. So for this question, it takes the adult 2 hours to absorb a maximum amount of 58.86 milligrams. For part D, on the set of axes provided, we need to sketch the graph of m of t for t is greater than or equal to 0, clearly labelling any axial intercepts and maximums with their coordinates and any asymptotes with their equations. Where necessary, state coordinates correct to 2 decimal places. So we've already sketched this on the CAS calculator, so we can essentially just reproduce it on our set of axes. So we knew that it went through 0, 0, and it comes up to a maximum, and then it decreases off to infinity. So this coordinate here was at 0, 0, and the maximum occurred at 2, 58.86. Finally, we have a horizontal asymptote that occurs down here, and that is going to have an equation of m is equal to 0. So that is the graph of m of t for t greater than or equal to 0.